I think the best place to start with the movie Ela Veezha Poonchira is the beauty. Oh my god, this movie was so beautiful. It's honestly one of the most beautiful movies that I might have seen. There was a movie that came out last year, The Banshees of Inisherin, which was also, kind of similar in that it just showed off the serene landscape and the beauty of the world. But honestly, I think this movie, Ela Veezha Poonchira, does it even better. Like, I was so mesmerized and taken aback to how beautiful that this place was. This hill station, this remote satellite station that they're staying on. It looks like it's just paradise. Like, oh my god, it is so beautiful. But what is so crazy about it is there's so much contrast in that with not just the movie, but also the beauty and the danger that they're living in. Right? We see how dangerous the rain is and the clouds, and obviously the thunderstorms, which are killing people. Thunder kills two people in this movie. Lightning kills two people in this movie. It's pretty crazy. But some of the scenery in this movie, oh my god, like the whole. Sometimes it would have the bird's eye view of the roads, and you see the winding roads. Obviously the lookouts, they're showing everything. The clouds and all that stuff amongst the backdrop of the mountains, some of the rivers and ponds they have, breathtakingly beautiful. I cannot say how taken aback I was with how beautiful this movie was, and I could literally just watch this movie in mute and just watch it for this landscape because it was so beautiful. It is honestly some of the most beautiful things I have seen in a very long time. Um, it took me aback. It was so beautiful. But getting on more to the movie itself, what this movie is about, man, it is a tale of two halves. It is two different movies wrapped into one, it feels like. Not saying that in a bad way, I think they complement each other, but just the way that the two movies, the first act and second act, if you want to say, sort of play out, are completely different. Completely different in tone, completely different, more importantly, in the pacing. So let's start with the first half. But the first half is very interesting. I think this is the kind of movie that if you go into not knowing much about it and not knowing what to expect, then you might get thrown off a little bit as to why this movie is so slow. It takes a long time to develop, like 20, 30 minutes, and it's almost just him taking a jeep to his station and not really exploring much. There's not much said. There's a very dramatic start of this movie with the foot, just by itself. So there's an element of mystery straight away. But seriously, like the movie takes a long time to really have anything happen. We have small little instances that happen with sort of the poor boy that sort of dies, gets struck by lightning, which was a great initial showing of how destructive lightning can be and how it's a real issue in these people's lives and how it can be used at the end as a weapon, which is insane. But basically, yeah, it takes a long time. Honestly, it gave me a few vibes of Nanpako Niratu Mayakam, so some Lilo Hos Pelisserie vibes in the direction. It takes a long time to unwind, and sometimes you don't really know why it's doing this. But really, I think it's just with atmosphere. Like, we really get a good understanding of, what's actually happening, what the world is like, and the atmosphere of the movie is so dark and gloomy, in great contrast to the beauty that I talked about before, which is the natural beauty of Kerala in a small village in Kottayam. If you even want to call it a village, it's even smaller than that, I think. But yeah, so the pacing and everything of the first half is so slow. It gives us some hints as to what's going on. But the main takeaway I got from the first half, before I sort of move on to talk about, the second half and all that, is like there's a real feeling of something ominous happening. Something bad is going to happen. Something really destructive is going to happen sometime soon in this movie. And you're just waiting for that moment when it comes. When is it going to flip the switch and get into that mode? When's it going to go to the next gear and just push it? Well, it doesn't go to the next gear. It goes to like 3 or 4 gears up because it takes us to a whole new place. And it's almost like I said, watching a different movie. A lot of credit has to go along with sort of just the, director of photography and the visuals and all that. But the score for this movie is beautiful. The music in the background, I think this might have been not the first movie, but it's one of the few movies we have done from the Malayalam film industry without an actual song. So there's no songs in this movie. I don't think so anyway. Um, it's mostly just background score, which is quite familiar to Western movies. So that's one thing that's there. But yeah, overall the score was absolutely amazing. It actually reminded me of a lot of Hong Kong cinema. I used to watch a lot of Hong Kong cinema and Chinese cinema, and it had a lot of these similar kind of vibes to them. So yeah, that was something pretty interesting. But yeah, man, let's get into the second half. Um, it's really interesting how the second half starts because it's just like, whoa, you're straight in it, straight away. At one moment in time, basically, we have it going at a pretty slow pace. They started to reveal the bodies. There's some murder mystery going on. And then we see the hand at the station. That image, that image of Madhu pointing the gun towards the other Sudhi in the shadows as you see it. Oh my god, that was one hell of an image. That was fantastic. That was so well done. And it's such a great start. It shocks you. It shocks your whole body and your system to be like, wow, what is going on here? This is completely different. I've just had the first hour of this movie basically do nothing and very, very gradually build a story. And then you show me this one image, which completely changes everything. You know, the first half was basically planting some clues here and there. We got to know a little about all the characters, except for, interestingly, Madhu, which we knew nothing about. But it sort of put some clues in as to what this might be. We have the other cop who's there, the vegetarian cop, Mr. Vegetables, as they call him. But there's a few clues going on as to who the culprit might be. There's one guy at the start who's eating like a beetle leaf, I think. And there's obviously Sudhi himself as the other sort of culprit that might be doing something just because of his nature and how he's always sort of, looking at people hooking up and stuff like that. But yeah, the second half as it starts, man, I was like so blown away. And I basically was going from watching like this to going to like this, where I was like, wow, I have to sit up and watch this because something's going to go down. This is going to go crazy. And it sure did. This movie got crazy. This movie was insane because for the next 40 minutes or so, this movie was just edge of your seat. Do not pause it. Do not move. Don't do anything because you're not going to want to miss this. It almost turns into a survival thriller. That's what it feels like. Because after seeing, the conflict between Madhu and Sudhi, there's so many questions that start arising. Like, why didn't you just kill him on the spot, for instance? Then you ask, why do you want to kill him for? What's the purpose? What's your intention of, murdering this woman and putting her body parts everywhere? So many questions start to go through your mind, right? And little games that Madhu plays, like when he's having sort of dinner with, not dinner, sorry, he's having a meal with Sudhi and he's sort of talking about murder. And, Sudhi's saying the first thing he wants to know is who's the killer. And Madhu's whole response is, my first thing is, I want to know what the motive is. It's giving us a lot of foreshadowing and it's giving us a lot of clues as to what to sort of expect for the next sort of 40 minutes. But man, the pacing of the second half is a completely different movie from what we saw in the first half. And I give the movie and direction and writing a lot of credit for that because for a viewer to just, go from one mode to another, it's not easy to do. Most movies don't take that risk because it just doesn't happen that much. But this movie, of course, was bold enough, like Malayalam cinema is always bold enough to take big steps. It just doesn't. And I really appreciated that about this. It was so great. The second half is one I'm going to remember for quite some time because of how mesmerizing it was. But yeah, I can only sort of speak so much about the second half without mentioning this movie's climax. And honestly, wow. This ending and this climax was some of the most shocking stuff that I have, honestly, it's been a long time since I've seen something this shocking. This reminded me of elements of the movie Seven, with Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman from back in the day, where you have, the image of like the head at the end or whatever it was, that's sort of, left an impression on me. This movie's done the same thing because, yeah, if you're eating dinner while watching this movie, make sure you're not eating dinner during that scene because it is so disturbing. This movie is so dark and so disturbing in that way. It takes you to a place that's, oh my God, unthinkable. Like, to have that kind of torture put to you where you're not just eating a human, that's bad enough. You're being fed the murdered victim. You're being fed your child. I was shocked. I was amazed at that fact that they did this. That was insane that a movie would be bold enough to do something like that, to depict basically a child being eaten on screen. Obviously we don't see a child being eaten, but the implication of that's happened. Oh my God, it was one that was wow, unbelievable. I did not expect that at all. I can't lie. I did not expect that ending at all. Like, fine, okay, Madhu's the killer, and when they show sort of what he's done and what he's had to do, his tragic story, which makes a lot of sense as to sort of his quiet and reserved nature as well all the time. He's obviously going through something, and they hint at us, right? We get hints of that with him not eating properly, with him throwing up when he's eating meat. He's obviously going through something traumatic, but it's done so well and so subtly that it's never the focus of the movie because of all the other stuff that's going on with the basically the murder mystery and the weather being a big component, and then the thriller. You sort of put that aside as to this guy's going through something. So there was really I couldn't pick it up. That there's no way I could pick up that he was the murderer, and then after that he was a murderer, that he did this thing where he fed Sudhir the baby. Like, I didn't even expect Sudhir to even be the villain in the end because you're almost on his side. You want him to escape from this madman. Poor what do you call it, this actor Sudhi Koppa. He seems to always be in places, whether it's Madhu from this movie or Unimukund from Unimukund Associates, stuck with madmen. But in this case, he did something horrible. But yeah, that's this movie, man. The Malayalam film industry. You guys know how to do revenge thrillers. You guys know how to do a good revenge thriller. I'll say that because after watching Rorschach and seeing Mammootty fight a spirit, now I'm seeing somebody chop up a body and feed them their baby. Oh my God, this is insane. This is one of the most craziest things I have seen. The ending to me is still with me. Before getting too carried away, I do want to mention a few things. I found it really interesting at the end how the senior cop or whoever he was knows that Madhu committed the crime, but he lets him get away with it. Again, it's playing with a moral ambiguity. Again, like who is right, who is wrong, what should be done here. And I guess the cop at that time made the decision that, Madhu had been wronged and that he deserved at least this, he deserved to not go in prison for something that, he's gone through with this because he's been through enough. So that was really interesting. I want to give a quick mention to the actors in this movie. Amazing performances. I've only seen Sobin Sahir in Bisham Parvam, where he was fantastic in that movie. But again, he was more of a side character. And I also saw him in the movie Gold, where he was dancing his ass off. So that's the two places I've seen him. But in this movie, to have such a great role and where he's so contained, he's holding everything inside and he's doing it so well. It's seriously impressive, this guy's performance in this movie. It's one that's very understated, but the scenes where he's breaking down, and he seems to do that really well. He did it in Bisham Parvan as well, when he sort of has to go through grief. He does that really well. So obviously, but it's great to see him in a lead role. He can definitely pull off a lead actor. He's fantastic. He was great in this movie. And of course, Sudhi Koppa, who I mentioned before, from Uni Mukund Associates. Great to see him in a bigger role. And yeah, he was great in this as well, playing that sort of devious bad guy, but also sort of, getting us to be on his side. The games that they played with each other, the taking out the SIM card and scratching it, turning off the dispatcher, stuff like that was fantastic. The tension when he's in the toilet and he brings the water in. Oh my god, so well done. A lot of credit to the direction. A lot of credit to the screenwriters. This movie was fantastic. This movie was so good. I enjoyed this movie a lot. I really enjoyed it. Um, so yeah, I'll come down to my sort of final rating for this movie. I think I'm going to give this movie a pretty solid dynamite. Like again, 8 out of 10, which is where it seems like most of the movies sort of fall. For the Malayalam film industry, it's rare to see a bad one. It feels like, but some of the reasons why I wouldn't go higher in this is because yeah, look, I can understand people might not enjoy the first half, and it's an hour long. In a movie that's an hour and 45 minutes, you could say the majority of this movie is sort of spent just doing other things. How much does that pay off? That's a good question to ask, and that's might be why I give it sort of a 8 out of 10 or like a 4 out of 5, you could say. Um, but yeah, let me know your thoughts on this about this movie. I really enjoyed this movie. I loved it a lot. I really hope people like this movie. And go out and watch it. It's on streaming platforms at the moment, I believe, in India. Um, but yeah, it's not that hard to find otherwise either. But yeah, thanks a lot for listening again. I really appreciate all the support. Leave your comments on what you think. Leave me other movie recommendations, which I like this. Would love to get to them. And yeah, until the next time, guys, I'll catch you on the next one.